Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are jumping into a story that didn't just rattle local politics.
Oh, not at all.
It triggered this instant, massive federal intervention, and, it became a global viral phenomenon. We are talking about the alleged $10 billion childcare fraud scandal out of Minnesota.
It's a truly extraordinary story. We're dissecting the source material here, primarily this one highly publicized expose video.
Yeah, the one that got attention from, J.D. Vance and Elon Musk almost right away.
Immediately.
Oh.
And this deep dive is so critical because the story shows how welfare systems, systems meant to help children, were allegedly exploited.
And not just exploited, we're talking to the tune of potentially $9 billion.
$9 billion. And it led to the incredibly rapid resignation of a major political figure.
So our mission for you is to walk you through the whole picture, the shocking scale of this alleged fraud, the specific vulnerabilities that let it happen for so long, and then the fallout.
The intense political and law enforcement fallout.
Exactly. We want you to understand not just what happened, but, how something like this could even happen.
Well, what's fascinating here is just the sheer audacity of it all. An estimated $9 billion allegedly stolen, and it explodes onto the national stage because of one investigator's work.
It's incredible.
It just shows how organized exploitation can, completely compromise these massive federal funding streams.
Okay, so let's unpack this from the very beginning. The investigator at the center of all this, Nick Shirley, he wasn't even looking for fraud initially.
No, he was actually in Minnesota for a totally different story.
Right, he was covering the rising local Somali population. But then while he's there, he starts hearing things from locals.
Whispers, basically.
Yeah, people telling him, you have to look at these daycares and assisted living homes that were popping up everywhere.
Allegedly run by Somalians getting these huge government checks, but seeming to have no one inside.
But to do anything, he needed data. Verifiable data.
And that's when he connects with a man named David, who had been looking into this for years and had an insider source.
A critical source. David had access to funding details for CTCAP,
which is the Child Care Assistance Program. It's the government program that pays for child care for low-income families.
And David's first big red flag, the thing that kicked off the whole physical investigation, was just so simple.
Unbelievably simple.
He told Shirley he never saw a single child at these daycares that were cashing millions of dollars in checks. The money was there, but the kids weren't.
So when Shirley went to actually check these places out himself, the evidence was, it was blatant.
Take a facility like Mako. The findings said it received upwards of $5 million.
$5 million. And what did the investigator find?
Blacked out windows, locked doors, and, no signs of life, no toys, no footprints in the snow in the middle of winter, nothing to suggest it was a real functioning daycare.
And that story about his fictional son, Lil Joey, just perfectly captures how absurd it was.
It really does. He goes up to a door, asks if he can enroll his son, Lil Joey, and the woman who answers. She won't even give him a brochure.
You'd think a business getting millions in government funding would at least have a pamphlet. It shows they weren't even trying to keep up appearances.
It's the sheer lack of process that's staggering. The investigation also found the Quality Layering Center, layering with an A.
They misspelled learning on their own sign.
And this place got $1.9 million and had over 90 violations cited against it.
90. We're talking health and safety, staffing, administrative failures, you name it. And still, the state just kept cutting the checks.
Which makes you ask, what specific programs were they targeting? It wasn't just, basic childcare money.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
The analysis shows they were exploiting specialized high reimbursement programs.
Let's connect the dots on that.
Okay, so look at the autism funding mentioned in the source material. The money for autism services in Minnesota just skyrocketed. It went from only $1 million in 2017.
Get this. $200 million by 2024.
The 200-fold increase. That's astronomical. And the analysis suggests the reason they targeted it is because those reimbursement rates are way higher than for standard childcare, and there's often less oversight.
So it was a perfect target. And that kind of jump in funding takes us right to the question of who is culpable here. Someone in the government had to see that.
You would think so.
The source material is very clear. The Governor Tim Walz was allegedly aware of this widespread fraud as far back as 2019.
Yet the investigation suggests he was, quote, enabling this fraud to happen through inaction. Walz himself even said, the buck stops with him.
That is the critical breakdown point in the system.
Uh,
Can you just slow down for a second and map out the money trail for us?
Sure. So the federal funds come from HHS Health and Human Services.
Okay.
Then they land at the state level with the DHS, the Department of Human Services. It's the state DHS's job to audit and then distribute that money.
And the investigation's findings show that the DHS just kept paying these places even after they had dozens and dozens of violations on record.
That's the core of the failure. The licensing guidelines were apparently very low, and they were reportedly lowered even further under the Biden administration.
Meaning it was easy to get into the system.
Very easy. The whole system was built for dispersal, not for scrutiny. So that lack of accountability at the state level basically created a welcome mat for organized fraud.
Okay, now we need to touch on the demographic context, and we have to be clear, we are reporting impartially on what's in the source material.
Right. These are specific claims from the investigation.
It links the concentration of the alleged fraud to the local Somali community, which has a population somewhere between 80,000 and 200,000 in Minnesota.
And the claims reported are strikingly specific. The findings indicated that 81% of Somalians in Minnesota are allegedly on welfare benefits.
And that 89% of this specific childcare fraud was reportedly being committed by Somalians.
Which immediately begs the question, why Minnesota? Why did it become ground zero for this?
It really sounded like it was a perfect storm.
The analysis suggests a few things. First, this idea of Minnesota nice, a general acceptance of refugees, which led to lower scrutiny.
Combine that with the easy licensing rules we just talked about.
Exactly. The source suggests groups realized they could move in and exploit these programs, and nobody was really watching. It was this fiscal, financial, legal loophole just waiting to be rinsed and repeated.
So let's get into the mechanics. The core of the scheme is basically arbitrage, right?
That's a great way to put it. The state paid them, let's say, $500 a week per child through CZ-CAP, assuming they'd spend that on staff, food, rent.
But since the daycares were ghost facilities or barely staffed,
their actual operating cost was near zero. They were arbitraging the government rate against their non-existent costs and just pocketing the difference.
And the sources detail this whole sophisticated cash economy loop. It was designed to do two things: avoid taxes and let employees keep collecting welfare.
Yeah, walk us through that, because that's where the scheme gets really insidious.
Okay, so this is a critical insight for you, the listener. The income limit for getting certain welfare benefits is pretty low.
Right.
So by paying employees, often women, who were sometimes related to the men getting the checks, a really low salary, maybe $30,000 a year.
They kept them just under that income threshold.
Exactly. So the employees could still legally collect welfare benefits, which maximized the total take for everyone involved. And the sources also said many were just paid in cash to hide the income completely.
Wow. And this local scheme then had a, frankly, terrifying international angle.
It did. The source confirms money has been traced back to groups like Al-Shabaab. That takes this from a local scam to a national security threat.
And the way the money moved was highly organized. There's a chilling anecdote from a former TSA worker.
Yeah, detailing hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash going through airport security. These cash mules were careful to keep each bundle under the $10,000 declaration limit.
So they wouldn't trigger any automatic red flags. This cash was then allegedly sent through hubs like Dubai and eventually wired to Somalia.
So you have this sophisticated local fraud with ghost operations and a sophisticated global flow with cash mules. What was holding it all together?
The glue, according to the source, was something called non-emergency transportation companies, NMTs.
And these are supposed to transport clients, say, from an adult daycare to a doctor's appointment.
Correct. But here they were allegedly just providing fake paperwork, logging activities for services that never happened. This fake log makes the daycare look like it's actually serving real clients.
And the numbers they were pulling out were huge.
The findings estimate these NMT companies were sucking out around $2 million a day from the system.
$2 million a day?
Based on an average of, 20 vehicles per company charging $50 a trip. The investigator found so many of the listed NMT addresses were just fake. But the system kept paying them.
So once that video went viral, the political fallout was immediate and it was dramatic.
It was. Governor Tim Walz at first fought back hard. He called the investigator a white supremacist and a delusional conspiracist.
But the pressure was just too much. Shortly after the expose, he dropped out of the running for re-election.
And the federal response was just as powerful, maybe even more so. This really shows the power of investigative journalism to force the government's hand.
What did they do?
Feds launched multiple investigations, and HHS, they took the huge step of freezing all childcare funding for the entire state of Minnesota.
Wow. That must have sent shockwaves through the state government.
Oh, absolutely. And here's the one detail that just says it all. The condition for turning the money back on was simple. Businesses had to prove they were legitimate.
And at the time, the sources were recorded.
Zero. Not a single business had submitted proof of legitimacy.
That is unbelievable. And this exposure apparently even led to a high-level structural change.
It did. The source reported that the Trump administration plans to create a new assistant attorney general position.
With nationwide jurisdiction over fraud, and they're focusing first on Minnesota. That just shows how one viral report can directly shape national policy.
But despite the expose being proven true, the investigator himself faced this immediate hostile backlash.
Yeah, the source described how mainstream media focused on delegitimizing him, calling him a MAGA YouTuber.
And that led to really serious personal consequences. Death threats, doxing, to the point he had to hire 24/7 security. The personal cost of exposing this was immense.
And that gets to the final challenge here. This isn't an atomic bomb issue you can solve with an algorithm.
No, it's a painstaking physical whack-a-mole problem. It requires people on the ground investigating every fake address and every fraudulent paper trail.
So to sum this all up for you, we've uncovered how low regulatory scrutiny and organized exportation can allegedly siphon billions in taxpayer money, leading to these dramatic political changes and immediate federal action.
And the great takeaway here is really the double burden this kind of fraud creates. On one hand, you have hardworking taxpayers who are, as the investigator said, being robbed.
Mm-hmm.
And on the other, you have the legitimate childcare providers who are now unfairly tainted by this massive wave of scrutiny.
Which leaves us with a final provocative thought for you to consider. The source suggests that somewhere between 3 and 7% of all taxes nationwide go toward fraud.
A staggering number.
So if Minnesota, with its culture of low scrutiny, was this perfect fiscal loophole that netted an estimated $9 billion, how many other states like California, Ohio, or New York, which are mentioned as having similar potential issues, how many of them have their own massive vulnerabilities just waiting to be exposed? What does it really take for taxpayers to feel confident their money is actually going where it's supposed to go?